Hello everyone. I am Airial certified life and veteran development coach and founder of the Veteran Woman. I am here with Miss Carolyn Tolliver-Lee. I'll let you tell us about yourself instead of me trying to say what all you do because I would do it no justice.
Well, hello. As Ariel said, my name is Carolyn Tolliver-Lee. And I guess the number one thing I do, I think I would identify myself as being an educator. And that's my career, that's my passion. Secondly, I am a caregiver, and I have been a caregiver for 20 plus years. My veteran is totally and permanently disabled, living with a TBI and PTSD, among other things. I am also a mother of four wonderful men, and I am a wonderful grandmother of eight.
Wow.
Just had my new grandson arrive in July, and he made me the eight.
Congratulations.
Yes, I can't wait to go see him.
So, I just took your class about caregiving and self care. And I learned every time I speak with you, I learn more and more about you. And your story just continues to awe me.
So, what
So
captured you tonight?
I don't even know where to begin.
Oh my! Oh my!
But it was definitely a very good class. How often is the class?
Well, here at this facility, UFM, I have agreed to teach it once a semester. So it'll be offered three times out of a calendar year.
Okay. Okay. Um, so let me see where to start. So tell us about your journey as a caregiver.
You ever heard the expression growing pains?
Hmm.
Being a caregiver has been like growing pains. Um, First, I had to recognize, then I had to understand, and then I had to accept. And it didn't happen easy. And moving through that process, there were a lot of growing pains, a lot of tears, a lot of quiet moments, and a lot of isolation. Not necessarily loneliness, but isolation. Some time, some time alone with Carolyn, so Carolyn can figure out where she was in life and where Mr. Lee was in life.
How did you have the courage and the wherewithal to stay with him and help him as long as you have? Because that is so commendable. I know to you, you're like, what else am I supposed to do?
Exactly.
But it's not that easy for people. And not saying that it's easy, it was easy for you, but it's just you don't hear that much.
Well, I knew the type of person I am. I would never abandon him. I had a friend, her and I talked a couple of years back, and she told me I should tell more people about that conversation. So I'm going to share a little bit with you. Um, I can date it back all the way to my childhood. My father, ironically, was a disabled veteran, a World War II veteran.
Mhm.
He was totally and permanently disabled too, but he was blind. He lost his vision in World War II. So I grew up with a father without sight, which was normal
Mhm.
in my home.
Mhm.
And we never treated him like he was handicapped, although we had to assist him with various things. But the respect for him was always there. He was our father, and his disability did not lessen our respect for him. And then later on, when I was a youngster in school, I became a candy striper. Remember the candy stripers?
Yes, yes.
I became a candy striper, and I volunteered on Saturdays at a convent in my community. So I say that to say I think caregiving has always been a part of my composition, and I can attach being a mother of 4 sons along with that. But yeah, I think I needed to share that I started out as a young girl being a caregiver.
And that makes a difference. So it's always been in you,
Yes,
instilled in
yeah,
you.
it has been. And I watched my mother take care of my father. One thing that I have to safeguard myself against that I think she should have done more is taking care of yourself.
And how do you take care of yourself? What are some of the things that you do?
Well, I remember I had this conversation with my sister one time, and she says it's okay to be selfish. And sometimes we always think of selfish as something negative. Selfish in the sense of using the word no and feeling good that you can set those boundaries with people or with events or things that you want to do and not do. That's okay. Um, I really had to ask myself, what is it that I wanted from my life? A lot of times, journaling helped me find those answers. I would write and write and write until I feel like, oh, what was disturbing me? I think I've just stumbled across a solution. So, journaling has really helped. But above everything, Airial, I think choosing the right associations.
Mm.
That is something I had to learn the hard way, that I had to choose the right associations in my life.
And what do you mean by that? Can you explain more?
Well, um, I seem to set goals for myself that at one point in time in my life, other women may have and did think negative of. I enjoy traveling and I work so I can have money to travel. And I would do that. And not everyone life is designed or we would have that same interest. And because it wasn't their interest, they would be very critical of it. Um, Making comments like, how can I travel when Mr. Lee is incapacitated, without them realizing that this was all part of the self-care plan for myself. In a perfect world, Mr. Lee would have been well enough to travel with me. The reality, he was not. So do I deprive myself? No. I make sure that he's taken care of before I leave. And I go out for a couple of days, 3 to 4 days, whether it's a cruise, whether it's visiting my hometown, but just a getaway so I can get recentered and come back and do it again.
And self-care is very, very important. And I know you spoke about that in your class. So make sure if you are a caregiver, if you even aren't a caregiver, but you want to know more about how to take care of yourself and some self-care techniques, make sure to get in touch with Miss Carolyn. Very important. Very, very, very important. Because when we're taking care of somebody or when we're doing so much, if we don't take care of ourselves, then if we don't take that, I always say, if we don't take that 1 hour a day or 1 hour a week even to take care of ourselves, then we could be out for a week once we hit that burnout point. So it's self-care is very important. It's not selfish in a negative way. It's selfish in a good way so that you can help somebody else, because you can't fill another cup from an empty cup. Remember that.
Very good. I agree.
So
I'm waiting to see where you're going with this. Go ahead. I'm listening.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So I know you call Mr. Lee your veteran.
Yes. Yes.
Tell us more about that.
More about that. There was a time, Airial, when this injury first happened to him, I noticed that whenever I would use the term spouse or husband at that time, it was very, very teary-eyed for me, because what it always made me realize of what I did not have healthy anymore. We have a vision of husband or wife, and we have a vision of someone who's up going to work every day, mowing the lawn on Saturdays, taking us out to dinner, sleeping side by side, eating dinner together, someone who's there, who's present. And whenever I would hear the term or reference the term spouse or husband, it just reminded me of what I did not have.
Mm.
So I learned in a class, and education is a wonderful thing, that sometimes you have to reframe things. And how was I going to reframe this? How was I going to give it a name that I felt comfortable with? And I went to the nursing home one day and I looked at how the people interacted with him. And the nurses would walk up, Mr. Lee, do you want your medicine now? Mr. Lee, do you want to lay down? Mr. Lee. And I learned from them that they can call him Mr. Lee and still take care of his needs. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to still take care of his needs, but I did not want it to be an emotional wreck in doing it. And it's wonderful when I take him to the VA and we're walking through the corridors, and this is no exaggeration. I'll be pushing his wheelchair, and all these people that we pass in the corridor, and they'll say, "Hey, Mr. Lee, hey, Mr. Lee." And he doesn't know these people. He doesn't remember because his memory is about shot. And then he'll wave to these people and they'll say, "Hi, Mr. Lee." I mean, from the man who's mopping the floors to a doctor walking down in scrubs. It seemed like if we passed 20 people that day, 15 of them knew him. And they probably really did, because he lived there for about 6 years. So he is well known at the VA, and he's been ill a long time. So Mr. Lee is my way of preventing the tears from falling, I'll be honest. And it's another way of respecting him. But even more than that, it's a way of me going to visit him and handling what I consider to be his business. I go to the nursing home to check on Mr. Lee. And what does that consist of? I want to know what's going on in his life. I'm not going to be the family member who comes to see him, give him a hug, holds his hand, and then never get the history of what his week was like. I want details. So I'm there on a mission because I'm there to handle Mr. Lee's business.
So Miss Carolyn is being very humble. She doesn't just go and handle his business. She is a very, very strong advocate for veterans. So tell us more about how you advocate for Mr. Lee and other veterans. Tell us about Elizabeth Dole Foundation. I got to tell her what to say. Hidden Heroes, the proclamation, all of that. Meadowlark, all of that.
Okay, Airial, you gonna pull it out of me. Yes, I'm trying to be modest. Mm-hmm. Okay. Several years ago, when I would even meet a stranger, Airial, like I mentioned, I would travel and I would be sitting beside an airplane talking to a complete stranger like we often do. And I would get on the subject of Mr. Lee, and they would say, "Oh my goodness, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. This would benefit so many other veterans, wives, and children. You need to write a book." But I didn't feel like I needed to write a book. I wanted more contact with people. And I started thinking about what could I do with these 20 plus years of experience. I know there was something I was supposed to do with it. I'm not going to deny that. But I truly believe it wasn't a book. So I gave a class a couple of years back, a training on at the WTB, the Warrior Transition Battalion. Here I'm thinking I'm teaching other spouses about caring for their veteran. And somewhere in the training, I realized, oh, this is me. This is me. I am a caregiver. This is who I am. I am a caregiver. And one thing led to another, and I said, that's what I want to promote. I want to promote caregiving. I want to learn more about what all that is encompassing, although I was doing much of it at that time. But I knew because Mr. Lee is nonverbal, and I knew I would have to speak up for him, and I accepted that challenge. It empowered me because now I knew exactly what I needed to do for him. And there were times when I would go to the nursing home or to the VA, and the other people would be there visiting their veteran, other family members, and they would pay attention to me. Or a soldier's wife would come up and ask me something, and they would notice something in me. Um, and I was like, wow, this is serious, and people are watching. I'm thinking I'm in my own little world taking care of my little veteran, but people are watching. There's one thing I want to tell you that I didn't share with you this evening, and this really stumped me when it happened many years ago, and I would say maybe 7 years ago, when Mr. Lee was able to go out to lunch, and I would take him out to lunch. We were sitting in a restaurant. Let me back up. I walked him into the restaurant. I sat him down, gave him his walker, and I went to go order his food. I brought the food back to the table and, cut it up for him and everything and placed everything to where, he could get it. And I'm watching him, making sure he doesn't choke. And this lady in the far corner of this restaurant was paying attention. Mm. And she came up to me and handed me a piece of paper. And on there, she had written in pencil, "I've watched how tender you have been with him." Mm. And I was like, people here in the restaurant, people are paying attention. Mm. And she says, "God has got a blessing for you." And I said, what is this about? It was nothing. This is what you do.
Right.
But she saw it as something so tender, and to quote her term, something so lovingly. And because they saw how he was handicapped and how I had patience with him and how I waited for him to chew and, trying to engage him and just make chit-chat conversation with him. But she noticed that. And I kept that letter for a long time because she says, I noticed how lovingly you are towards him. Of course, she didn't know who we were. And she says, God has a blessing for you. And I said, oh, wow. I thought, oh, wow, people are paying attention. Again, I'm just in my own world. It is, like you said, I've been doing this a long time. I could not see myself not doing anything else. This is unfortunate that this has happened to him. It's unfortunate that it has happened to us. And regardless to which direction my life goes, I am committed to making sure that he has the best life he can in his condition.
So tell us about the Elizabeth Dole Foundation.
Oh, yes. Don't try to... Elizabeth Dole Foundation.
Don't think you're going to get away.
It's probably one of the best things that's happened to me.
So far.
So far. A young lady on Fort Riley learned that Mr. Lee was disabled, and she told me, she said, have you ever gone to the Hidden Heroes Elizabeth Dole Foundation website. And I knew the Doles were politicians, but I knew nothing about the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. So I did a little research, and they had a what do you call it? You're the computer person. A link to where I go and fill out this application that I was interested in learning more about becoming a Hidden Heroes officially. I learned at that time that I was a hidden hero, and a hidden hero, according to Miss Dole, is anyone who is caring for an ill, injured, or wounded veteran, and nobody really knows about it.
Mm.
And they're in our communities, they're our neighbors, they're sitting in our churches, they're sitting in our offices, our workplace, and people don't know, like many people didn't know about Mr. Lee, that we're working side by side with people who have veterans who have disabilities, and we're caregivers. Although we're doing the 9 to 5, we still have someone we have to take care of. So I filled out the application, and the foundation responded to me. I learned on their website that they were having their initiative, which was last October, I believe. And I wanted to go because what I read on the website, I said, now I'll get to see people like me, people who are caring for disabled veterans, and this is a part of their lives. I didn't see that here. I didn't see that here. So I actually went to a town hall meeting, and I don't know if I told you this part. I went to a town hall meeting here in town, and the city manager introduced me, and she asked for me to come up and talk about the hidden heroes, very much like what you just did. And I went to the mic, and I told them about Mr. Lee and his condition and how long he had been living in that condition. Well, lo and behold, in the audience was 3 soldiers.
Mm.
And sometimes I can't tell one soldier from another in uniform. But I did tell them at the mic when I stood up there that this big conference was coming up, and I really wish I could go. But when you buy airline tickets at the last minute, they're very expensive. And I said, I really wish I could go because I was just craving to find other people like me. And I thanked them for allowing me to speak, and I took my seat. Well, the next day, the city manager called me and said those 3 soldiers were so touched by my story that they wanted to buy my ticket. I didn't tell you that, did I? That they wanted to buy my ticket to go to Washington, D.C. And I said, you got to be kidding. And she says, yes. She says, I have money right here for you when you can come pick it up. I said, you got to be kidding. In less than 24 hours, I don't know who these men are. I've never seen them before and have not seen them since. But they heard my story, and you know, soldiers take care of soldiers. They heard my story and they said, we want to help you go. So they bought my ticket. I paid for my hotel room, and I flew to DC like 10 days later. And I stayed 3 days. And I had an opportunity to meet Miss Dole and to speak on Capitol Hill about my veteran and plead with them to improve the quality of care for veterans with traumatic brain injuries. But 3 strange soldiers sponsored me. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. They chipped in, and she said that's what they said. After the meeting, you know, everybody dispersed the meeting. I went home, and when she called me, she said, the gentleman sitting in the audience heard your story, and they want to help send you to Washington, D.C.
Wow. Yeah.
It's true. It is true. That's a true story.
Wow. I'm telling you, every time I speak with you, it's something else. And I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. And then I said to myself when I got to my quiet time, I said, I must be on to something. This caregiving thing for disabled veterans, people get it, but people don't get it unless they know about it.
Mhm.
But those three men, whoever they are, wherever they are today, they allowed for me to go and speak on behalf of my veteran. And the outcome was as such that it helped other veterans as well. So I want more moments like that for him. The sad thing is that he knows nothing of what I'm doing. He doesn't know how I go out and advocate for him. He doesn't know or comprehend the classes that I give. He can't process that in his condition. But I'm very, very passionate about it.
And you're helping so many people. Sharing your story is helping so many other caregivers who may not even self-identify as caregivers, but are there taking care of a loved one with an illness and don't know how to work through the guilt, the anger, the depression, the grief, everything that you talked about in your class today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're right. The key word is you have to identify yourself. You have to own it. You have to, it's not a romantic relationship. It's not a marital relationship. I am his voice. I am his voice. I I I not only require, I mandate that people take care of that veteran. And by the same token, I try to be good to his nurses. They get Mother's Day cards from me. They get Easter baskets from me and my granddaughter. We sit up and we color Easter eggs for them, and we take that to his nurses. I've gone out to the candy factory and have made them a basket full of treats. Christmas time, I always try to remember them. I drop them little cards. I send little special notes to their supervisors of things that I appreciate that they do. I never let them go unrecognized, and let them know that I appreciate what they do taking care of my veteran. I do. I acknowledge that. And I try to know all his nurses by their first name.
Wow.
And that's good because we are a family.
So before I start snotting and boo-hooing, can you tell us about the group, your network?
The network, I gave birth to the network when I came back from Washington, D.C. It felt so good, Airial, to be in a room of hundreds of caregivers that knew what it was like every day to be concerned about another person's well-being because of their time in the service. And I looked at Miss Dole and I said, I want to be like that. I want to be able to bring other caregivers together and let them know there is strength in numbers. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to get something done fast, do it by yourself.
Mm.
But if you want to go the distance, do it with others.
Mm.
And I said, that's what I needed. I needed that camaraderie. I needed to know there's other people in my community. For years, Airial, I sat in churches, and people in church didn't get it. They see it as a duty. They see it as something required of me. But caregiving is a lifestyle. I incorporate his appointments into my month. I rearrange my work schedule. I I'm always on duty with him. It's a lifestyle. Um, Even when I travel, I'm always contacted if he goes into a crisis or emergency. So even though he doesn't live with me or with, his children, I'm always on duty. And that's why I guess I identified with those nurses, because they're always there to take care of him. And I feel like I'm the same way. I could be teaching a class and my telephone can go off, notifying me of something. And that's okay because I let people up front know this is what it's about. And it's okay.
So how do people reach you about the network?
The network, the Veteran and Military Caregivers Support Network Incorporated. I'm so proud of that, Incorporated. Can reach me at area code 785-320-2125, and my email with letters VMC Network 2912 @gmail.com.